we saw it was on full display. They open it up with perhaps the most performative woke thing you can do, a land acknowledgement. Really? You're going to say this is on stolen land? If you think it's on stolen land, then give it back.
This is all you. I mean, this is like TAN 2.0.
Don't build an $850 million library on it. The other thing is, I like the idea that united Americans, but I don't think most conservatives.
There's a moment in the CNN segment that perfectly captures what happens when a talking point falls apart under even the slightest bit of scrutiny. In this clip, the entire panel presses a MAGA commentator after she labels Barack Obama as divisive. Sounds like a strong claim, right? Well, wait until you see what happens when she's asked the obvious follow-up question, why? That's when things start to unravel. Before we get into it, if you're new here, I'm Bradley Hostin, and this is The Bradley Hostin Show. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. Now, I need you to stick with me until the end of this one, because after we watch the clip, I want to share my perspective as a young black man on why that word gets used so often when it comes to Barack Obama, and what I think is really behind it. Let's watch the clip, and then we'll break it all down.
Tonight, the Obama Presidential Center is officially open. All 4 other living former presidents and first ladies attending the opening ceremonies on the south side of Chicago today, along with a number of celebrities. President Obama took the podium and encouraged Americans not to lose faith in each other and to remember that collective voices and how we treat each other matters. Forgetting that fact, he says, only gives power to those trying to divide us.
For us to give in now, after all this country's been through, to cynicism and division would be a betrayal of our founding ideas. And I remain convinced that the overwhelming majority of Americans feel the same way.
So in some ways, this was like church for liberals. It was. Everybody was dressed in their Sunday finest and sitting in the pews. And he was delivering a message about, not just about that, but also actually, there was a lot of contrast happening about Trump in the remarks from him. And I'll play some a little bit later from Michelle Obama. What did you make of it?
You know, I really thought it was great that he didn't mention Trump's name one time. You know, he didn't mention him one time. And I think that, frankly, America got to get a chance to remember what it was like to have a president that could really give speeches that united us as a country. And I think what's really interesting is that, you know, Trump spent decades criticizing Barack Obama on literally everything that he could do. And then ultimately, he got a chance to see on the day that, you know, Obama opened up his presidential center, Trump got to negotiate a pretty bad deal. And I think that it's really just a reflection of why it's important to talk about history. I think a lot of people are going to be able to learn about the JCPOA. And as this MOU comes into fruition, they'll be able to see exactly the contrast there.
I do want to play this from Michelle Obama because she alludes to these attacks on her husband from people like Trump, for example. Here's what she said.
The claims that a U.S. senator and constitutional law expert wasn't qualified for the job. The lies about your birthright, your faith, your patriotism. The outrage when you stated the biological fact that if you'd had a son, that he too would be black. Yet, you were unflappable at every turn. Always focused, always calm, always looking at the long view.
And what she's not saying there is that that is a contrast with the guy in the White House right now.
You know, the words we didn't hear from these remarks today: sucker, loser, piggy, stupid, fake news, idiot. It's a permission structure when a president uses those terms for our children to hear it and our children to want to use those terms as well. It's modeling the worst of rhetoric and the worst of behavior. President Obama, First Lady Obama, didn't invoke the name calling that has gotten in a cancerous way into our political bloodstream and makes us not want to expose our children to the highest people in power.
And Mark, I saw you nodding. I mean, do you agree with that?
I do. I have, as I think you know, tremendous respect for President Obama. I had the privilege of actually being in Grant Park on election night with the Obamas and the Bidens, watching the results of that campaign. I'll never forget that moment. And I think what this was really about, I don't think this would have been the place for that kind of political rhetoric. This was not a political event. This is the dedication of a presidential library. And he did it and gave that speech with the class and grace that is consistent with Barack Obama. I might not have agreed with all of his policies, but when it comes to being someone that was, I think, a president that crossed party lines, and I think we'll see later on remains very highly popular from people that both lean right and left. I think what we saw today was consistent.
Okay.
And
There's a little bit of revisionist history. Yeah, he's incredibly eloquent. He's a very skilled orator. He's very articulate. I'll give him all of that. But he was also a very divisive figure.
How?
And can I talk? Can I talk? Thank you.
This is a good one.
Look, we saw it was on full display. They open it up with perhaps the most performative woke thing you can do, a land acknowledgement. Really? You're going to say this is on stolen land? If you think it's on stolen land, if you think it's on stolen land, then give it back.
This is all you. I mean, this is like Tan 2.0.
Don't build an $850 million library on it. The other thing is, I know I like the idea that he united Americans, but I don't think most conservatives.
But how is he the
conservatives
most
who were
divisive
targeted by the
president,
IRS, nuns who were told they had to pay for abortions and contraceptives, and he was
But how
very
is he the
divisive.
most
Can I just
divisive
say, when we're talking about things that using federal government, first of all, Obama did not target the federal government for his opponents. That is something that Trump is doing.
Well, I think
hold on. I let you talk. That he also did not do that. What I will say, one of the bigger contrasts, I think, that has not been mentioned, I think, over the coverage is you have to remember that when Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, it was Barack Obama who called Hillary Clinton and told her, you need to concede. And he understood that there needed to be a peaceful transfer of power, and he told her that. Then what happened? He welcomed the Trumps to the House, to the White House. He ensured that they had what they needed in order to have a peaceful transition. Take that, and then take January 6th. And look at that contrast. Hold on. I'm not done. But listen to that contrast. Then there's also Barack Obama has done a lot to raise the next generation of leaders, while you have Donald Trump, who is just saying, I anoint people.
Well, let me let Lydia respond to that, because I hear you saying, first of all, you're accusing Obama of personally doing something that
his administration.
Well, we know that what you're talking about at the IRS was the responsibility of individuals within the IRS who were held responsible for that. That had nothing to do with Obama. Right. And you've never provided, nobody has provided proof that that came from the White House or from the president's office. The second thing that you mentioned, which is basically abortion policy, I take it that is your view of how that policy should operate in this country. But you have to understand that another half of the country believes the opposite of what you believe. Right. So when you talk about divisiveness, Barack Obama was smeared as not being a legitimate president because Trump was lying that he was not a native-born American citizen. And then he welcomed that same man into the White House. Right. Their wives sat down and had tea. So what else?
I think Obama is incredibly
question.
I think he's incredibly
It's a legitimate
classy.
question. What else? Why is Obama considered by a lot of conservatives, and maybe you're one of them, to be so incredibly divisive? Is it because he told people he was black?
Right.
No, no. I think he's incredibly classy. He's a very eloquent speaker. I think there's a lot of things to credit him for.
Lydia,
I'm saying his policies. You know, and I will credit him for this as well. He said that he thinks America is great today. I think he said the U.S. is an undeniable force for good in the world. And I was glad to hear him say that, because when he was in office, he would go on these sort of tours essentially apologizing for America. And I look at the Democratic Party today, 36% of whom are not proud.
Last year, Donald Trump went to the Middle East, and he said that America's past policies of regime change in that region had been a failure, and that it was that we were trying to basically overtake these great societies. He was literally, what you guys accuse Obama of doing, Trump went to the Middle East and said that we've been trying to change your societies and we have failed, and we've been trying to export our way of doing things on you. He said that last year.
Right.
So I am not understanding this. Like,
Well,
or at least I want to see more evidence. I would
respect,
like to see more evidence.
cer-
That's all I would like to see.
In that respect, circumstances changed a bit, right? Iran advanced their nuclear program much more rapidly than expected. There were changes in
that's not
in
even
the
what I'm talking
shifting
about.
sands.
I'm talking what Trump was talking about was the U.S. military involvement in the Middle East,
I know
Iraq and
what you're talking
Afghanistan
about.
wars, and beyond. It was a very broad statement. She just said Obama was apologizing for the United States around the world. Where's the evidence? That's all I'm asking.
Well, so I think we're missing the point of what President Obama was trying to say during the speech. This was not an anti-Trump speech. This was not, let's get back at him. This was, we need to come back together as a nation. We shouldn't have states opting out of the 250th anniversary celebration in D.C. as a political statement. That I heard that this morning. It was absolutely heartbreaking news to hear that that's even being considered. And I don't think that Barack Obama is terribly happy with the state of his own party right now.
Yeah.
It looks very different than it did when he was in the Oval Office. It's much more polarized. It's been had quite a lot of woke and other influences that I don't think that Barack Obama was a woke president. That wasn't even a thing when he was.
But look, here's the thing. I get that you might get it, but I'm really focused on this. When you say that President Obama is one of the most divisive presidents in history, that's something that you guys can never back up. You never can bring up any substance. It's a talking point that you guys always say. So to Abby's point, what specifically are you referring to when you say he's one of the most divisive presidents in history?
He did not invite Milli Vanilli to the library party today, or Vanilla Ice, or CNC Music Factory. That's a difference from the American 250.
Right.
That
Didn't
is a
have
big
that on
difference
my
from the
bingo
American
card
250.
for sure.
That is very true. Next for us.
I've got to be honest with you guys, this segment genuinely frustrated me. Not because Lydia Moynihan called Barack Obama divisive. We've heard that talking point for years. What frustrated me is that Abby never made her explain it. You can't let someone throw out a claim like that and then just move on. If you're going to call a former president divisive, back it up. Explain it. Give examples. Make the case. And when Lydia was asked why Obama was divisive, she completely froze. Now I'm going to say something that some people aren't going to like, but it's how I honestly feel. I think the reason so many people on the right label Barack Obama as divisive has less to do with what he actually did and more to do with who he was. A young, black president who represented a changing America that a lot of people simply weren't comfortable with. Think about it. Donald Trump didn't rise to political prominence because of some great policy idea. He rose to prominence by pushing the birther conspiracy, questioning whether Barack Obama was even a legitimate American president. That wasn't some fringe idea. That became a major part of modern Republican politics. And yet somehow Obama is the divisive one? The same people who call Obama divisive will bend over backwards to excuse almost anything Donald Trump says or does. That's why I have such a hard time taking the argument seriously. The truth is, Obama didn't create those divisions. He exposed them. He held up a mirror, and a certain section of the country didn't like what it saw staring back. And that's why I was disappointed with Abby. Lydia should have been forced to answer the question, because the second she was asked to explain herself, she had nothing. But that's just my view. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me where you're watching from.